This is Picks on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Happy Hump Day. It is April 23rd, and this is Pop Daily, Picks on Politics Daily. I'm Dan Mannarino. Don't forget, you can watch full episodes of Picks on Politics every Friday night, 6:30 p.m., Sunday mornings at 7:30 a.m. And then here we are in the Daily, bringing you things that are happening at the moment in time. So this week, there's some important bills that are going to be put forth over at the City Council, and potentially could become law on April 24th, meaning tomorrow. So I want to bring in right away Councilmember Tiffany Cabán right here, who is the sponsor of these bills, talking about protecting transgender rights, gender non-conforming rights as well. And they have really come under attack in the last couple months and weeks, really. So Councilmember, good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I want to talk first and foremost about these bills and why you felt so why this was the moment in time for these specific bills. Talk about them and what exactly they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is always an important time to stand up for the rights and dignity and humanity of every single New Yorker. I am a queer New Yorker myself, and we know that in this moment, the Trump administration and the right generally are targeting, they're scapegoating not just trans and gender non-conforming folks, but we're seeing other populations, whether it's immigrants, women, and we are not going to back down. We're always going to support the transgender community. We have a rich history of that in this city, and we're not going to back down just because the administration wants to set them up as scapegoats. And,
yeah,
history, we should be aware of this, but trans folks have always stood up for all of our civil rights throughout history. And so it's only right that we're standing up for them in this moment as well.
And one of the bills, this is important here. It would require city agencies that collect gender information on forms to add an X option for people who don't identify as male or female, right? And that is something the Trump administration wanted to do away with, specifically when it comes to things like passports. So how do you see this playing out if it passes on the local level, which it is likely to? How does that have any impact on what happens on the federal level?
I think it does, but also I think it sets the stage for other municipalities and states across the country to follow our lead and do what we're doing, right? The goal here is to cement non-binary and non-conforming gender identities in every New York City agency, because to your point, right, like this is in response to being able to gum those gears of fascism. We're going to refuse to erase trans people. And another important part of this is continuing data collection, because they're erasing that at the federal level. Data and research that mention, trans, diversity, all of these different words are being erased. And so validating trans and gender nonconforming existence, yes, and also protecting the information that's going to continue to be critical to be able to serve New York residents on an everyday basis.
So how do you see it playing out, though, right? Because if it does pass and it becomes law in New York State, but say you go to get your passport, which is a federal document, right? Or your license, which is a state document, would you be able to put down X, or or is what they're looking to do have somebody put down what they were assigned at birth?
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't have the power to stop the federal government with simply our legislation. We can do that with a powerful mass movement with changing the political environment, but we can't stop the federal government, tomorrow from ripping up passports and other documents and sending them back to people. But we can cement their dignity and existence in our city and support them as they navigate any corner of New York City. We're going to protect them here while we're fighting that larger battle that we're seeing, again, scapegoating that community. And this is out of an old playbook. We saw this actually in Nazi Germany, where the government targeted trans people and put them in concentration camps and burned books. What we're seeing here is Trump take out that same fascist playbook, disappearing queer asylum seekers into prison camps, and then the digital book burning of the research, the data, and setting us back decades. And so we're not going to let history repeat itself in this city, and we're going to be an example for what the resistance can look like across the country.
Yeah, I want to just kind of lay out some of the resolutions that are in these bills. One of them calling on New York State to pass a law that blocks other states from accessing New York's prescription records for medications like abortion pills, hormone therapy, puberty blockers to help protect patients' privacy and safety. can you, again, talk on a larger scale? Because if you, I guess, were to cross over into Nassau County, for example, the Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman is very anti all of these things. So what's the pushback you're getting? And how do you see it playing out on a state level?
You know, the nice thing about some of the pushback we're getting is that the things that we're pursuing are rooted in safety and health. And the reality is that, you know, trans folks who are, again, now being targeted, and this, by the way, this isn't about protecting any particular ideology. This is about protecting lives, period. And we know that when it comes to gender affirming care, that every single major medical association in America says it is essential that we provide access to gender affirming care to people of all ages, right? And so that's just following the data. If we want to protect families, if we want to protect children, then providing gender affirming care reduces major depression, it reduces suicidality, it makes for healthier and safer communities, and that's what's really important at the end of the day. And the people who are ringing the alarm bell are parents of trans and gender nonconforming children who are just simply really scared about losing access to life affirming care. And that's what we can put before people.
And here's the thing, is it more of obviously it's for a protection standpoint for folks, right? Is there more of an education campaign as well for folks who just don't understand some of the things you're talking about? And that's why they may be opposed to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a mix of things. You know, here in New York City, we have a rich diversity, and depending on where you are, you know, lots of queer and trans and gender nonconforming folks, and maybe somewhere else you don't. But
if I can interrupt for 1 second, the only reason I say that is because when we were covering a lot of the elections and campaigns and congressional seats from around the area, meaning Westchester, Nassau County, and so on and so forth, you know, it always came up about trans athletes and whether or not that was really an issue in those communities. Like how many and it almost seemed like from the folks we interviewed that there were none. And so they were fighting this issue for something that was really non-existent in their community. Now, I know it's different in New York City, but that's why I bring up the question of education.
Yeah, but even then, it's still a tiny part of the population. And so I am going to bring up the wonderful Laverne Cox and paraphrase her. But to your point, trans people are less than 1% of the population. Yeah. They're not the 1% that's hoarding wealth. They're not the 1% that's to blame for how expensive your rent and your healthcare are. They're not the 1% to blame for the fact that you can't afford childcare. And so blaming the trans community, a tiny minority that just wants to live freely, it's wrong, it's dangerous, and it's a distraction from the things that aren't being provided by leadership in this moment.
What are you hearing from the rest of your city council members, including the Republican caucus? Are they on board?
Listen, I don't see the Republicans being on board with this because, again, this is more about it being out of their political playbook. It is very, very in line with what we've seen throughout history. But what I am heartened by is that we have the vast majority of our city council standing with trans and gender nonconforming New Yorkers and saying that we're going to stand up. We are not going to allow you to be scapegoated, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that you can live healthily, safely, and with dignity. And also understanding that we're the front line in this moment. We have to step up. And, you know, it's not just trans folks. It's trans folks now. It's immigrants now. And we are seeing attacks on people with different political ideologies. We are seeing attacks on women. And we are seeing all of these different attacks that are just going to grow. And so we all have to stand together to defend one another.
Have you spoken to the mayor's office about it?
We have spoken. I mean, we were able to negotiate these bills to pass. I do want to see greater leadership. And one way that we are, you know, quote unquote, talking is through this budget negotiation. And so you'll see, and I was really proud of this, that the city council as a whole, in our response to the mayor's preliminary budget, put in that we are demanding money for gender affirming care, money for outreach and services for transgender and gender nonconforming New Yorkers and queer New Yorkers, and that is a demand that we are going to make sure gets met in this budget process.
And you think it will?
I think it has to.
All right, keep us posted on that. I know that tomorrow is the big vote, and I want to hear more about it post-vote, but it is expected to pass. So keep us posted on that. And that goes into effect right away then, right?
Yes.
Okay. And let us know about the budget too. I want to talk to you while I have you just quickly about Rikers Island. It's been an issue we've been laser focused on here about ICE being on Rikers Island. And I spoke to your cohort, a colleague in the council yesterday, Councilmember Alexa Aviles, about an interview I did Friday with First Deputy Mayor Kaz Daughtry, and how he said they were moving full steam ahead to get ICE onto Rikers Island regardless of the lawsuit. Now there's this temporary restraining order. And then yesterday, you saw the mayor with the border czar, Tom Homan, speaking about Rikers Island and the necessity there. I just wanted to get your reaction to kind of what played out in the last 24 hours, even with the TRO.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for context, I was a public defender who represented clients on Rikers for almost a decade. And, there was a time when ICE was on Rikers, and it was wrong and it was problematic, and we removed them for good reason. The reality is that we are a society at not just the city state, but at the federal level that believes in due process, that believes in our constitutional rights. And there's a lot of misinformation being flown around, right? We know that illegal acts are illegal acts, and our criminal legal system should treat everyone the same, regardless of immigration status. But ICE, especially under this administration, takes away due process. And that's really, really wrong. They've been violating constitutional rights. They've been disappearing people to foreign prison camps. They've been locking up third graders. They've been terrorizing communities. And we know by the data that New York City sanctuary city policies, they're not just a law, they keep us safer. There are all of these studies that prove, one, that immigrants are good for America, that immigrant New Yorkers enrich our culture and strengthen our economy. But even more than that, that sanctuary cities are safer than non-sanctuary cities. They have less crime per capita than non-sanctuary cities. And so this fight that Adams and the federal government is saying about our safety, it actually flies in the face of what data and research tells us contributes to more safety, while stripping people of their due process rights. And so we're gonna keep fighting like how I've been really, really proud of the council's leadership, the speaker's leadership on this front.
Okay. Councilmember Tiffany Cabán, great to have you. Good conversation, and keep us posted on all things with those two bills and then the budget as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good to see you. And that'll do it, everybody. Good conversation here as always. And you can find, by the way, all past episodes of Pop Daily on our website, pick7.com, and then always streaming here on Pick7 Plus. But that'll do it for today on this April 23rd. I'm Dan Mannarino. Enjoy the rest of your day.